Professor Borody is an internationally regarded physician known for his ability to repurpose or recombine approved drugs for new treatments. He's most famous, he is most famous for his cure for peptic ulcers. People used to think ulcers were caused by stress. It turned out that they were caused by a bacteria. So Thomas Borody used a combination of 3 approved antibiotics to kill the bacteria, saving 18,000 Australian lives and millions around the world. He has 4 FDA-approved drugs on the US and Australian markets and has also sold or licensed a number of his innovations to pharma companies. The Ivermectin triple therapy he has developed for COVID-19 is made up of 3 medications that are all approved and in use around the globe. Welcome to Outsiders, Dr. Thomas Borody. How are you?
Hello, nice to hear your voice.
Well, good to see you. So how did you come up with this Ivermectin triple therapy, and is, first of all, it safe?
Well, that's the main thing about it. It's safe. It's been around since 1975, and it is a broad spectrum. It kills viruses, bacteria, and parasites. And it had all the makings of it, especially in a test tube. It was 5,000 more powerful than anything else. And the trouble was that it was a fairly high dose in a test tube. So what we added to it was an antibiotic that is also an antiparasitic and antiviral, which is doxycycline. So we could reduce the dose and add a general endosome active agent called zinc. And we were surprised how amazingly well it cures coronavirus. It's an easy virus to kill.
What have you done with this research? So let's get on to that. Is it peer-reviewed, or are the government looking at it? What steps forward are we seeing? Presumably our health authorities have been on the phone to you saying, come on, talk us through this?
Well, I wish they were. So we've set up trials in the US because that's where the patients were. Now they've blown out in here, but we are in the US so that we can have a box made up with 3 drugs in blister packs for 10 days to cure America, cure Australia, cure the world. But I've had fairly negative answers from the government here. I have a feeling because it never gets past the advisory unit.
Rita?
Well, has anyone overseas tested this regimen, and why are you so confident that it's going to be effective with coronavirus?
Well, because there are multiple works done elsewhere, because it's an antiparasitic. It sits across South America, quite a bit in the USA, also India and Bangladesh. And in those places where trials between 80 and 160 patients were done, the amazing and surprising thing is there's not one paper where it was successful less than 100%. And, you know, when something's too good to be true, it is too good to be true. But nevertheless, that is the actual factual result. It is curative within 6 to 8 days.
James?
I want to ask 2 questions. Number one, what is the mechanism by which this knocks out the coronavirus or COVID-19? And why do you think there is just sort of such a bias among governments to go for these silver bullets that are being supposedly manufactured by different pharmaceutical companies rather than look at solutions that might already be on the shelf?
Well, I'm speaking as a person who repurposes multiple drugs for killing intracellular, inside cells, bacteria and viruses. So this ivermectin and others inhibit intracellular proteins that help this virus to be multiplying in our cells, because they cannot multiply on their own. They have to enter our cells, and that's where we nab them. And there is an integrin and a transportin. They're 2 named proteins that it inhibits. And you combine it with a few others that also work in these tiny vesicles inside our cells, and the reproduction stops dead. And I am still surprised how well it works and how few side effects it has. There are so many doctors who take it around the world and don't tell you about it until you ask them, as a preventative for themselves not to catch it, because often they're frontline workers.
The Sky viewers would like to know that Dan Andrews is making a speech, a press interview, a statement at 11:30, which you can have here on Sky. Dr. Thomas Borody, Would this be good news for someone like Dan Andrews? If in your opinion, would this drug be able to ease, for example, the lockdown?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I would suggest that we get some flying doctor units. That means a doctor and several nurses or other workers, and treat every day every positive person, and then do preventative treatment for those who are around them. And every day, if we were to treat 500 new cases and say 3,500 a week, the numbers that would go into hospital, you can count on your fingers. And currently, we have more like 300 to 500 going into hospital. So I think it would be excellent news, and it would just break the blowout of the numbers.
So you, in your opinion, is definitely safe?
Oh, absolutely. And I take it myself.
And research around the world, the other clinical trials around the world, are you following them closely?
Oh, I have them all listed. And there have been studies which showed 12 milligrams versus 18 versus 36. And the worst side effect, which was in 6.3% across the board of doses, was headache. Then some people had a sore toe. Then it was a backache. And, you know, someone mentioned that they also had some dizziness. They're the sort of side effects we're talking about.
And is that common in these sorts of drugs?
No, well, no, 6%. 6 out of 100 will have a headache.
Right.
That's probably the normal incidence of a headache in 100 people anyhow.
Fascinating. Well, I hope Greg Hunt and others are watching. Rita, James, are you going to be asking Dr. Thomas Brody for a script?
Can I ask one more question before we go, if I could? We've put all our eggs in the vaccine basket in this country. As an expert, I just want to know what you believe the chances are of developing an effective, safe vaccine in the next 12 months for COVID-19.
Well, I'm not a vaccine expert, but I read broadly, and vaccine is in a lot of trouble. But if we use a preventative combination of ivermectin every, say, 2 weeks, it would work like a vaccine, but it would not only cure, vaccine doesn't cure, and prevent recurrence as long as you took it for 1 year, 2 years. There are papers that show that the vaccine loses its activity between 3 and 6 months. So we are in trouble with the vaccine. Ideally, let's say we treat and then vaccinate, treat and vaccinate. Whatever happens, we need to have a therapy as well as a vaccine.
Dr. Thomas Brody, thanks so much for coming on Outsiders. Well, Greg Hunt and Brett Sutton and all those other chief medical officers out there, Paul Kelly, why don't you give this bloke a buzz? Maybe he could teach you a thing or two.